Prophecy World Watch with Stephen LeBlanc. I'm Willie Bremer. Mr. LeBlanc, the fall of Afghanistan. What does this mean to the Middle East and to the rest of the world?
It is a stunning development, Willie. It's stunning in the sense that it happened so quickly. No one thought it would happen as quickly as it did. It hurt America enormously the past couple of weeks because America came out of this looking confused, indecisive. It seemed like America didn't even have a plan. And you saw the chaos. The whole world saw the chaos in Kabul, particularly at the airport. So this hurt the United States. And the confidence around the world in the United States was shaken because America, remember, is the premier financial power, but also the premier military power, supposedly the leader of the nations of the world. And we didn't seem to know. I'm talking about how it was handled. The administration in Washington didn't seem to know what it was doing. So, what it said to the world, it said to the world that America is feckless, America is confused, America's divided, America is weak. And when the world sees that America is weak, then you have under the radar, you have a total repositioning of the nations. European nations are saying, okay, what do? We can't rely on the United States. Look at the way they handled this situation. It hurt everyone. And our quote unquote enemies, such as Russia and China and Iran and other quote unquote enemies, are saying, America shows itself to be indecisive and confused. We're going to take advantage of this. In terms of the terrorists around the world, they too will say, well, look, America will not confront us as boldly as they once did. So this was very significant, Willie.
Mr. LeBlanc, tell us about Pakistan and its relationship with Afghanistan.
Okay, Pakistan and Afghanistan, they border one another. Pakistan has a population of nearly 230 million people, mostly Sunni, 230 million people. Pakistan is the fifth most highly populated nation in the world today. China's number one, Pakistan number five. Afghanistan, 40 million people. Pakistan, over the years, has been given the responsibility by the United States to some degree to somewhat try to control or thwart the plans of the Taliban. But Pakistan, at the same time, has been funding the Taliban in Afghanistan. So it's been a relationship that hasn't worked. Pakistan has been duplicitous. Pakistan can't be trusted. Afghanistan is totally out of control, but now under the control of the Taliban. And Afghanistan has always been very difficult to control, going all the way down through history. The British were beaten up in Afghanistan. Even the Russians recently took a good licking in Afghanistan. Now we took our licking. It's very difficult to control. It's very tribal. And they're fighters. They're constantly fighting all the time. So the bottom line is Pakistan can't be trusted. Remember, Pakistan was the location where Osama bin Laden lived for several years until America found out, and then we assassinated him using the Navy SEALs. But the Pakistani government at that time, they knew Osama bin Laden was there, but they didn't tell us. Bottom line, don't trust Pakistan. And they aren't, quote, the friends we thought they would be. One other thing I want to point out here is in the book of Jeremiah chapter 30, verses 14 through 15, it talks about America's lovers will turn upon her. It's prophecy about Israel, the time of the end, America being part of that prophecy. And we've tried to buy the Pakistani governments down through the decades. And we have given the Pakistani governments approximately $3 to $3.5 billion every year, $3.5 billion every year to try to help them to control the situation. They've used that money. They can't be trusted. We've wasted a lot of money there. But again, it's our fault. Can't blame the Pakistanis totally. We trust these lovers. We try to buy off the Pakistanis. There are other lovers in the Middle East, like the Iraqis, etc. We try to buy off, and eventually all these lovers are going to turn against us.
Mr. LeBlanc, how big a victory was it for the terrorist organizations Al Qaeda, ISIS, Taliban, Hezbollah, and Iran?
It was enormously such an incredible victory for them. It was enormous because everyone knew the United States was going to leave Afghanistan, but they never thought that the United States would bungle the last couple of weeks in the way they did. Even Tony Blair, once an ally of the United States, who is considered left of center, he's not considered, quote, right wing, former Prime Minister of Britain, said it was imbecilic in the way it was handled. And that's what the world saw. America didn't seem to have a plan. And you saw the chaos at the airport and the chaos still playing out throughout Afghanistan. So these terrorist organizations like ISIS, which still exists, Al Qaeda, which has reestablished its presence in Afghanistan, welcomed by the Taliban, which is a terrorist organization. All these terrorist organizations, including the proxy terrorist organization used by Iran called Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, all these terrorist organizations are saying, look, America is not strong. America will not confront. America speaks strongly, but does not carry a big stick. So all these terrorist organizations are going to be emboldened to put forth their agendas of terrorist activities throughout the Middle East, South Asia, and Europe. They're going to be much more bold. And Israel's very concerned about this too. Even Israel is looking to talk with other nations, including Russia, to see if Russia can maybe exercise a greater degree over the Taliban than America did, because the message is clear now. Even American allies cannot rely on the United States militarily. We simply look indecisive, and that scares the whole world.
Mr. LeBlanc, where will all the refugees go after the Taliban takeover?
Well, there are already 2.9 million Afghan refugees that have either settled in Pakistan, Iran, or other places around the world, including Europe. European leaders are very worried, and they are holding meetings throughout the next weeks, asking the question, what are we going to do? Because a lot of these Afghan refugees, and they say right now there are about 450,000 Afghan refugees who want to leave Afghanistan immediately, probably multiple millions more. Where do they go? Some will go to Iran, some will go to Pakistan, but many of them want to go to Europe. That's where they feel safe. This is very tragic. Many of these refugees, they're just families. They're trying to survive. They're not all terrorists by any means. But Europe doesn't want to see another influx of refugees. They're angry with their politicians because of 2015, 16, 17, and still ongoing, a flow of refugees from the Middle East and South Asia, which continues to try to enter into European cities. This is a major political crisis. I'll say it again, Willie. It's a major political crisis for Europe because many of those Afghan refugees want to end up there. What do these European leaders do? The populations in Europe, the average citizen are saying, don't you dare allow large numbers of refugees from South Asia, Afghanistan in particular, come back to our cities. If you do, we're going to vote you out of office during the next cycle.
Mr. LeBlanc, tell us again how the world now views America.
The United States is still considered the leader in the world, but it's a indecisive, wobbly, weak leader. So all the nations, even our friends, are scrambling to find relationships with other leaders of other nations so that whatever happens in the world over the next couple of years, and it's sure to be chaotic, including many wars, immigration, migration issues that threaten Europe and the rest of the world. What do you do with all these refugees? They're looking to form new alliances. So America, definitely the world's great economic power, definitely the great military power in the world, the great political power in the world, but it is a nation that is confused. It is a nation that is seen that will not back up its military commitments, and it will not back up its bold statements. There's a proverb, Proverbs 28 and verse 1, which says, the righteous are as bold as a lion. Well, America is no longer righteous. Our abortions, our very high divorce rates, we have the highest divorce rates in the world. Our drug addiction rates, sadly, our very high suicide rates, even among teenagers. America isn't the strong nation it once was, and we're not a bold nation. And so this will impact the whole world. We're considered to be confused and weak by our friends and by our enemies.
Mr. LeBlanc, what literature are you now reading?
I'm reading this book called The China-Pakistan Axis by Andrew Small. That's by Andrew Small. Very interesting book. Remember, China, the number one nation in the world today, population-wise, a rising political, economic, and military threat to the whole world. And Pakistan, the fifth largest populated nation in the world today. Almost forgot this. This is very important. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. What happens if Pakistan were to sell one of its nuclear weapons? Remember, Pakistan is Sunni, Willie. Sunni Muslim. What if they sell a nuclear weapon to a friend or neighbor in the Middle East? Saudi Arabia is very close to Pakistan. They're both Sunni. What happens if a nuclear weapon were to be somehow smuggled out of the country? Pakistan's not a very stable country. So it's very, very worrisome. I do want to mention as well, of course, we know the German elections are coming up September the 26th. Very important elections. We'll talk about that a little bit next time. Germany in Prophecy, very important booklet. Germany is going to play a increasingly important role in the world. And Germany's watching this whole fiasco. And that's what European leaders are calling it, and other leaders are calling it. This chaos taking place in Afghanistan right now. Order the booklet free of charge. 40 Sins of America. One of our sins that I list in this booklet is we are constantly buying lovers. In the prophets, it talks about how God views it as a great sin to constantly try to pay money to have friends. And America's been doing that for many, many years. God is very angry with that. We tried to buy off the Pakistanis. It didn't work. We've wasted billions of dollars there. The Egyptians, the whole list, Saudi Arabia. I go on and on and on how we buy lovers. What I'd like to do, though, is close with this scripture to give you a bigger sense of prophetically what's happening here. What is happening is you're seeing America becoming weaker. This forces Europe to become stronger politically, economically, and militarily. Why? Because they are finally realizing you simply cannot rely on the United States. You just can't. We have a relationship over there, of course, with NATO. NATO's very angry with the way this was handled, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So many European leaders are very angry with the current administration in Washington. What this means is that Germany, as well as many nations in Europe, realize, even militarily, they need to learn to protect themselves. It's not that Germany is going to immediately start to focus tens of billions of euros on building up their military, but definitely they are shifting their focus. They're giving more money to building up their military because they can't trust the United States. Doesn't mean Germany's going to go to war immediately, but when you see a weaker America, it's forcing other European leaders, including Germany, to say, look, we need to be ready to protect ourselves from any threat. Prophecy tells us eventually, headquartered in Europe, and I'm reading from the book of Revelation chapter 13, where it says that John stood on the sand of the sea, and he sees this incredible beast, this monster that had 7 heads and 10 crowns rise up out of the sea. We're told in the prophecy that the dragon, Satan the devil, actually empowers this end-time European dictator. We don't know who this dictator is yet. Will empower this end-time Hitler-like figure. And eventually Europe is going to become this great, great military power. They aren't there yet. This will change. It's not going to happen in the next year or two, but it's going to change because as the world becomes more insecure, the nations of Europe realize they cannot rely on the United States. They have to arm themselves. They have to protect on their armies. This is very dangerous. Eventually, Europe, led by Germany, is going to become so powerful that the whole world will say who is able to make war with this end-time European beast power. You can read of this in those first verses of Revelation chapter 13. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we'll talk about the elections in Germany, and we'll continue to follow this incredibly dynamic, chaotic story out of South Asia, the fall of Afghanistan. Thanks for joining us.